The echo of silence in Sarah's suburban Chicago home was the loudest sound she'd ever heard. The bankruptcy notification on the tablet glowed, cold and unforgiving, like a death certificate for her dreams and for the life she and Mark had built for over 20 years. At 52, with her children grown and established, Sarah felt the weight of a world crumbling, not just financially. That paper was the materialization of a deep shame, of a failure that seemed to suck all her energy, leaving her paralyzed on the living room sofa, with the afternoon light filtering through the window and highlighting the dust on furniture she no longer knew if she could keep. It was midlife, and life, which should have been a safe haven of stability and fulfillment, was turning into a silent shipwreck. In her eyes, it wasn't just a matter of numbers. It was the loss of identity, purpose, and hope. What would happen now? How would she rise from the wreckage of a strained marriage and a career paused to raise a family? Sarah's story, though fictional in its details, echoes the reality of millions in the United States. A vivid reminder that bankruptcy, especially in middle age, transcends finances, striking at the core of mental and emotional health, leaving deep scars that require more than just debt restructuring. On a rainy morning in Seattle, John, a 58-year-old engineer, stared at the piles of unpaid bills on his desk. The tightness in his chest was almost constant, a dull ache that had settled in since his unexpected layoff 8 months ago. He, who had always prided himself on his stability and predictability, now felt like a boat adrift in a storm. Months of fruitless job searching had drained his savings, and collection calls were daily, incessant, making him hesitate to answer the phone. His overdraft was maxed out, credit cards at their limit, and his house payment 3 months overdue. He tried to hide the situation from his wife, Susan, but the tension was palpable in every prolonged silence, in every evasive glance. John's mind spun in a whirlwind of guilt and anxiety. How had he, who had always been so responsible, who had planned every step of his career and family life, come to this point of despair? The truth is that many, like John, don't realize the warning signs of bankruptcy until it's too late. Or, if they do, the feeling of shame prevents them from seeking help, and denial delays the necessary actions to prevent imminent collapse. Financial and economic experts consistently point to several clear signs that bankruptcy may be approaching, often silently and insidiously. One of the first and most obvious is the persistent inability to pay basic bills on time, such as rent, mortgage, utility bills, or car payments. This doesn't refer to a punctual delay due to an unforeseen event, but a chronic difficulty in honoring these essential commitments month after month. Another alarming indicator is the excessive and continuous use of credit cards to cover essential expenses that were previously paid with regular income. This creates a snowball of high-interest debt, where many people end up using one card to pay off another, creating an unsustainable vicious cycle of indebtedness. The drastic reduction of emergency savings, or their complete exhaustion, is also a red flag, as it demonstrates the lack of a financial cushion for unforeseen events. When the safety net disappears, any setback, no matter how small, can trigger a crisis. The growing dependence on high-interest personal loans or expensive lines of credit to maintain a lifestyle or cover old debts is a dangerous path many take, accumulating even more interest and fees, making the debt even more unmanageable. In the U.S., Federal Reserve data reveals that credit card debt reached $1.13 trillion in the first quarter of 2024, a new record underlining the extent to which many Americans are relying on this resource to survive, not to thrive. Furthermore, the absence of a clear and detailed household budget or the total lack of control over spending are factors that contribute significantly to financial ruin. Without knowing where money is going, it's impossible to identify leaks, cut waste, and correct course before it's too late. The sale of valuable or strategic assets to pay current debts, such as a car, family jewelry, or even a retirement plan, is a desperate sign that the situation is spiraling out of control and that all other options have been exhausted. In the emotional realm, constant anxiety about money, difficulty sleeping due to financial worries, and avoiding opening bank mail or answering collection calls are clear symptoms that financial health is at imminent risk, and that the psychological impact is already significantly manifesting. For John, the crucial first step to getting out of the hole was to face reality and break the silence. He finally confided the catastrophic situation to his wife, Susan, who, though initially shocked and saddened, offered unconditional support. Together, they sought the help of a financial counselor specializing in debt restructuring, a step John had delayed for months due to shame. The initial strategy set by the counselor was to create a rigorous and austere budget, ruthlessly cutting all non-essential expenses, from streaming subscriptions to dining out, and identifying where every dollar was being spent. They listed all debts, their interest rates, and payment deadlines, prioritizing those with the highest impact and highest interest. John also started looking for part-time jobs and odd jobs, using his engineering skills for consulting and repairs, generating some extra income, however modest, to cover the basics. Transparency with creditors was also crucial. He called each of them, explaining the situation and seeking agreements for terms and installments, which, to his surprise, resulted in some favorable renegotiations. This method, though painful and humiliating at first, allowed John to see a clear and structured path to recovery, pulling him out of his state of paralysis. The deepest lesson John learned was that ignoring the problem only aggravates it, turning a crack into an abyss. Fear and shame are enemies of action and solutions. By finally recognizing the warning signs and seeking professional help, he took the first and most important step towards healing, not only his finances but his own mental health. The concrete result of this change in attitude was a remarkable sense of regained control, even if partial, over a situation that seemed completely out of his hands. Anxiety significantly decreased, and communication with his wife strengthened, transforming a crisis into a shared challenge. Although the path to financial recovery was long and required continuous sacrifices, he knew he was on the right track to rebuild his financial life and, more importantly, his peace of mind and dignity. In Los Angeles, Maria, a 48-year-old single mother and teacher, felt the weight of a secret kept for years, a burden that suffocated her day after day. A contentious divorce and the unexpected, overwhelming medical expenses of her elderly mother had corroded her finances to the bone. She found herself in a labyrinth of unpaid bills, her salary barely covering the astronomical hospital installments and the lawyer's procedural costs. The lack of comprehensive health insurance for her mother and the uneven distribution of assets in the divorce, where Maria ended up shouldering most of the debt, left her extremely vulnerable. Every time a new expense arose, a shiver of panic ran down her spine, and she felt as if she were always one step ahead of total collapse. The shame of not being able to support her family as before, of seeing her children deprived of certain things, was overwhelming, and she became increasingly isolated, avoiding friends and social activities so as not to have to explain her humiliating situation. Maria was a perfect example of how unexpected events and a lack of adequate financial planning can quickly lead to personal ruin, even for those with good education and apparent stability. Financial and economic experts in the U.S. consistently point to some of the major causes of personal bankruptcy, and they often intertwine in a complex knot of adverse circumstances. Medical debt is, without a doubt, one of the most devastating and unpredictable. Despite advances in healthcare coverage and protective laws, many Americans, like Maria's mother, still face exorbitant costs for serious or chronic illnesses, even with some form of insurance. A 2019 American Journal of Public Health study indicated that about 66.5% of personal bankruptcies in the U.S. were linked to medical problems, which demonstrates the fragility of the system to protect the average citizen. Another predominant cause is job loss, or a significant reduction in income. In a dynamic and constantly changing economy, job security is not guaranteed for most, and the lack of a robust emergency fund leaves many families at the mercy of sudden layoffs or prolonged periods of unemployment. Bureau of Labor Statistics data shows that, in May 2024, the unemployment rate in the U.S. was 4%. And although it seems a low number, each percentage point represents millions of people without fixed income, many of them with heavy family responsibilities. Furthermore, divorce is a significant and often underestimated financial catalyst. The division of assets and debts, coupled with exorbitant legal costs and the need to maintain two households with the same income that previously supported only one, can quickly lead to collapse. Research indicates that divorce increases the risk of bankruptcy by an average of 77% for women and 63% for men in the years following separation. The poor management of credit card debt and the burden of excessive student loans are also critical factors. The accumulation of high interest rates and unsustainable minimum payments can turn small debts into insurmountable mountains, trapping individuals in a cycle of indebtedness. The widespread lack of financial literacy and the absence of a disciplined budget permeate all these causes, making people more vulnerable to economic shocks and the temptations of uncontrolled consumption. Many simply don't know how to create and follow a budget, save for the future, or invest intelligently, which leaves them in a chronic disadvantageous position and makes them easy prey for financial crises. For Maria, overcoming began when she finally decided to break the cycle of denial and sought specialized legal and financial support for divorce victims and those with medical debts. She discovered that there were assistance programs for medical costs and options for renegotiating hospital debts, something she hadn't even imagined. Furthermore, her lawyer helped her review the divorce terms and seek a child support revision that was fairer and consistent with her new reality and rising costs. She also began working as an online private tutor for math and science in her free time, generating essential extra income that relieves some of the pressure. Most importantly, however, was the courageous decision to talk openly with a therapist about the anxiety, shame, and depression she felt. This attitude helped her process the grief for her losses, rebuild her self-esteem, and develop healthy coping mechanisms for financial stress. The main lesson Maria took from her journey was the vital importance of not isolating herself in the face of financial adversity and seeking multidisciplinary professional help. Bankruptcy is rarely an isolated money problem. It is deeply intertwined with life events, mental health, and social support networks. The concrete result of her resilience and proactivity was a deep sense of relief and empowerment. Although financial recovery was a gradual process and required a lot of patience, she felt stronger, more aware, and more capable of facing the challenges that were yet to come, knowing that she had a solid plan and a reliable support network by her side. In Miami, David, a 62-year-old small business owner, was at the bottom of the deepest hole in his life. His Italian restaurant, Sapori di Nonna, the dream of a lifetime of work and dedication, had irremediably succumbed to the pandemic and a series of misguided business decisions and imprudent expansion. The accumulated debts were astronomical, and he had lost not only the business he loved so much, but also the house he had mortgaged in a last desperate attempt to save it. The feeling of overwhelming failure dominated him, suffocating him with an acute pain of loss and regret. He spent sleepless nights, reliving every mistake, questioning every decision, as his mind became a battlefield of what-ifs. His wife, Elena, and his children supported him unconditionally, but he felt like an unbearable burden to them, a man who had failed to protect his family. David was at a turning point, where the pain of loss was so intense that he desperately needed to find a way to get back on his feet, not only for himself, but for his family who had sacrificed so much. David's journey, though arduous, illustrates the crucial importance of practical strategies and a well-defined action plan for recovery after financial collapse. Financial recovery after bankruptcy is not an instant event. It requires more than just a desire to change. It requires a structured action plan, rigorous discipline, and a good dose of emotional resilience. One of the first and most effective strategies is debt negotiation. Instead of ignoring collection calls and the fear they generate, the debtor must take the initiative to contact creditors and try to negotiate more favorable payment terms, such as reducing the interest rate, extending the payment period, or even an agreement to pay a portion of the total debt in exchange for a full settlement. Many creditors prefer to receive something rather than nothing. Another crucial tactic is the creation and adherence to a strict and realistic budget. This involves meticulously listing all sources of income and all expenses, identifying where unnecessary spending can be cut and where money is being wasted. The primary goal is to live strictly within your means, focusing on essentials and eliminating luxuries. For many, this means drastically reducing their lifestyle temporarily, giving up luxuries, conveniences, and immediate pleasures. Actively seeking new sources of income, whether a full-time job, freelance work that utilizes existing skills, or starting a small business with low initial costs, is fundamental to accelerating recovery and reactivating cash flow. Data from the Gig Economy Index shows continuous and robust growth in self-employment and project-based work in the U.S., offering real opportunities for those seeking to supplement their income or start a new career after a crisis. Focusing on financial literacy is a long-term pillar for preventing future crises. Learning how to manage money, invest wisely, and avoid financial traps is essential for building a solid foundation. Credit rebuilding is a gradual process that requires responsibility and patience. It begins with paying bills on time, even small ones, and may include the use of secured credit cards to demonstrate reliability to creditors. Finally, seeking professional support, such as certified credit counselors, bankruptcy attorneys, or financial therapists, is vital to dealing with the emotional stress of the situation and receiving specialized, unbiased guidance. David, after the devastating bankruptcy of his restaurant, gathered the courage to seek out a non-profit credit counseling agency, where he received expert guidance on how to deal with his remaining debts and, more importantly, how to rebuild his credit, which was in tatters. He learned about the options under U.S. bankruptcy law, including Chapter 7 and Chapter 13, and, with the help of an experienced attorney, decided on the most suitable path for his situation, which gave him immediate relief from creditor pressure. He also decided to leverage his decades of experience in the food industry and began working as a restaurant consultant, using his knowledge to help other businesses thrive, which provided him not only with a new and stable source of income, but also a renewed sense of purpose. Furthermore, David and his wife, Elena, underwent couples therapy to deal with the stress and tension that the financial situation placed on their relationship, strengthening their bonds and learning to face challenges together. The most valuable lesson David took from his arduous journey was that bankruptcy is not the end of the line, but rather a painful yet real opportunity for a new beginning, provided one has a structured plan, discipline, and the right support. The concrete result of his effort and resilience was the gradual and constant rebuilding of his financial and emotional stability. He not only began to pay off his debts in an organized and sustainable manner, but also found a new career that fulfilled him and gave him a sense of worth. And, more importantly, his self-esteem and dignity were restored, allowing him to reconnect with his family and with life, now with a more mature and resilient perspective. In a vibrant Brooklyn neighborhood, New York, Carlos, a 55-year-old entrepreneur, watched his business empire crumble before his eyes. He had built a successful chain of electronic stores, but too rapid expansion, financed by a mountain of debt, and a flagrant lack of cash flow control brought him to the brink of the abyss. He lived under the dangerous illusion that exponential growth and new branches would cover all management errors. But reality knocked on his door with eviction notices for his stores, lawsuits from suppliers, and the inability to pay his employees. The absence of a robust contingency plan and overconfidence in optimistic projections blinded him to the real market risks and his own operations. His wife, Sophia, and their children watched helplessly as everything they had built collapsed. Carlos felt betrayed not only by his own excessive ambition, but also by his glaring lack of basic and strategic financial management knowledge. His story is a stark example of how a lack of financial literacy can be as destructive as unexpected events, leading to the loss of years of hard work and dreams. Financial literacy is the backbone of preventing financial crises, especially in midlife, when the risks are greater and the consequences of mistakes can be irreversible. Many of the common errors that lead to bankruptcy could be avoided with a basic understanding of how money works, how it should be managed, and how to protect it. One of the most frequent and dangerous mistakes is the absence of a robust and liquid emergency fund. Most financial experts recommend having at least 3 to 6 months of basic expenses saved in an easily accessible account for unforeseen events such as job loss, urgent medical expenses, or unexpected home or car repairs. Alarming data from Bankruptcy in 2023 reveals that 57% of Americans cannot cover an unexpected $1,000 expense with their savings, highlighting the financial fragility of a large portion of the population. Another critical error is the indiscriminate and irresponsible use of credit, especially credit cards, for routine consumption rather than emergencies. Compound interest can turn small purchases into huge, unpayable debts in a short time, trapping the debtor in a vicious cycle. Excessive debt in mortgages or car loans that consume too large a slice of monthly income is also a significant risk factor, making families vulnerable to any economic fluctuation. Furthermore, the lack of investment diversification and investing in get-rich-quick schemes without due knowledge or research are traps for many, especially those seeking accelerated and effortless financial recovery. The absence of a clear retirement plan is another common mistake that seriously compromises financial future. Many rely solely on Social Security, which alone is not enough to maintain an adequate standard of living in old age, requiring supplementation through private investments. The lack of adequate insurance, such as comprehensive health insurance, life insurance, disability insurance, and property insurance, can expose finances to catastrophic risks that can decimate savings built over years. Finally, the failure to regularly review one's budget and spending habits contributes to people losing control of their finances over time, accumulating debt without realizing it. Carlos, after seeing his business collapse so overwhelmingly, realized he needed a complete transformation in his financial mindset and management practices. He, who had previously considered himself self-taught, enrolled in financial literacy courses for entrepreneurs and began avidly reading books on cash flow management, strategic planning, and risk analysis. He also sought out an experienced mentor who had been through a similar situation and could offer practical and emotional guidance. The main strategy for overcoming was the creation of a new business on a much smaller scale and with a focus on services, requiring less initial capital and with much more controllable risks than his old chain of stores. He rigidly applied the principles of profit reinvestment, building an emergency reserve for the company, and clear separation of personal and business finances, something he had not done before. The most valuable lesson Carlos learned in his painful journey was that knowledge is financial power, and that the humility to recognize one's own financial limitations and seek learning is the first step towards long-term success. The concrete result of his dedication and learning was the reconstruction not only of his confidence, but also the foundation of a more solid, sustainable, and ethical business. He not only avoided the catastrophic mistakes of the past, but also became an active advocate for financial literacy, sharing his experience and lessons learned to help other entrepreneurs avoid making the same mistakes, transforming his pain into a purpose. In the heart of Silicon Valley, California, Lisa, a 45-year-old software developer with an impressive resume, felt the overwhelming pressure to maintain a lifestyle that no longer matched her financial reality. Despite earning a good salary, her student loan debts, high mortgage in one of the most expensive regions of the country, and rising inflation were suffocating her ability to save and invest for the future. She saw colleagues investing and growing their wealth, while she could barely pay basic bills, living paycheck to paycheck. The keeping up appearances syndrome was a heavy burden, preventing her from cutting unnecessary expenses and leaving her stuck in a cycle of chronic frustration and financial stress. She knew deep down that she desperately needed to find ways to increase her income and make her money work for her, but she didn't know where to start, paralyzed by information overload and insecurity. Lisa's story reflects the dilemma of many mid-career professionals who, even with good education and promising careers, need smart strategies to optimize their finances and build a secure future. For many facing financial challenges, seeking much-desired security in middle age, or simply wanting to accelerate wealth building, generating extra income and smart investing are fundamental and complementary pillars. Extra income is not limited to a traditional second job. It can come from various sources, many of which are flexible and adaptable to one's routine. An increasingly popular strategy is freelance work, using existing professional skills to offer services on online platforms. Graphic designers, writers, programmers, marketing consultants, and even teachers can find significant opportunities in the growing gig economy. Creating digital content, such as specialized blogs, YouTube channels with tutorials, or thematic podcasts, can generate passive income through advertising, brand sponsorships, or digital product sales. Renting out properties or spare rooms through platforms like Airbnb is another effective way to monetize underutilized assets. Online sales, whether of handmade products or reselling items purchased wholesale, are also viable options for those with an entrepreneurial spirit. Many Americans are turning to these sources. Statista projected that the gig economy in the U.S. is expected to reach $455 billion in 2024, showing the vast potential and acceptance of this work model. As for smart investments, the focus should be on diversification and a long-term horizon. Starting with low-cost index funds or mutual funds that replicate the performance of broad markets can be an excellent strategy for beginners, as they offer automatic diversification and reduced administrative fees. Regular and consistent contributions to retirement plans like 401s and IRAs, taking full advantage of tax benefits and employer matching, are crucial for ensuring future security. For those with high-interest debts, the absolute priority should be to pay off these debts before investing heavily, as investment returns will hardly outweigh the cost of accumulated interest. Continuous financial education is vital for making informed decisions, understanding risks, and avoiding traps, such as investing in volatile cryptocurrencies or pyramid schemes without proper knowledge and research. Lisa decided to implement a combination of extra income strategies and financial optimization. She began offering online private programming lessons to beginners and university students in her free time, leveraging her expertise in the demand for these skills. Additionally, she conducted a rigorous audit of her expenses, optimizing her budget with a financial management app, and directed a portion of her income to invest in a diversified index fund, focusing on the long-term and consistent contributions. To optimize her heavy student loans, She researched and found refinancing options with significantly lower interest rates, which alleviated a large portion of her monthly expense. Discipline and consistency became her new mottos, and she reviewed her finances weekly to ensure she was on the right track. Lisa's main lesson was that it's not just how much you earn, but how you manage, protect, and multiply your money. Generating extra income smartly and investing intelligently are proven paths to financial independence, even in challenging scenarios and with high responsibilities. The concrete result of her change in attitude and strategies was a profound sense of renewed control over her finances and an optimistic and clear outlook for the future. She not only saw her debts progressively decrease, but also began to build significant wealth, which brought her peace of mind and freed her from the constant pressure of keeping up appearances in a high cost of living environment. In Arizona, David and Susan, a couple in their 60s, were finally enjoying retirement after decades of hard work and disciplined saving. They had carefully planned every step, but a series of poor investments made by an inexperienced consultant, combined with unexpected and persistent inflation that eroded their purchasing power and rising healthcare expenses for Susan, began to dangerously erode their savings. The idea of having to go back to work, or worse, losing the home they had paid for with so much effort and which was home to so many memories, was a nightmare that haunted them every night. They had planned, but not for all possible scenarios. The feeling of vulnerability and constant worry about the future were daily companions, robbing them of the peace they so deserved. David and Susan's story highlights the critical importance of robust financial planning and continuous wealth protection strategies to ensure long-term security, especially when one reaches the stage of life where earned income ceases. Building a financially sustainable future, especially in middle age and during retirement, goes far beyond just saving and investing. It's about protecting what has been built with so much effort and meticulously planning for the unexpected. One of the most important and often overlooked strategies is the creation of a comprehensive financial plan and its periodic and rigorous review. This includes not only the detailed monthly budget, but also planning for large future expenses, such as children's education, home purchases or payoffs, and, crucially, retirement. The plan must be flexible enough to adapt to changes in income, market conditions, or personal life events, such as an unexpected illness or the need to care for a family member. Diversification of investments remains the golden rule for mitigating risks. Not putting all your eggs in one basket is a strategy that protects against fluctuations in a single sector. In addition to traditional stocks and bonds, considering real estate, pension funds, annuities, and other assets can significantly strengthen the portfolio and generate passive income. The acquisition of adequate and comprehensive insurance is an undeniable pillar of financial security. Robust health insurance, life insurance, disability insurance, and property insurance are essential to protect against catastrophic events that can decimate savings built over decades. Data from the Kaiser Family Foundation shows that, in 2023, the average annual cost of a family health insurance plan in the U.S. was over $22,000, highlighting the need for good planning and coverage. Debt reduction, especially high-interest debt, should be a continuous priority, even after initial recovery from a crisis, to ensure that income is not eroded by unnecessary interest payments. Estate planning and the creation of a will or trust are crucial steps to ensure that assets are distributed according to the individual's wishes, minimize inheritance taxes, and avoid prolonged and painful family disputes. Finally, continuous financial education is fundamental. Staying updated on market trends, new tax laws, and investment strategies is vital for making informed decisions and protecting wealth long-term against the challenges of the economy and life. David and Susan, after their recent and frightening financial difficulty, gathered their strength and sought the help of a financial planner specializing in retirement and wealth management. Together, they thoroughly reviewed their investments, reallocating some of the high-risk capital to more conservative and lower volatility options that offered stable income, such as government bonds and dividend funds. They also diligently researched senior assistance programs and supplemental health insurance options, such as Medicare Advantage, to reduce their medical expenses, which were one of their biggest concerns. Additionally, to supplement their income, they began to generate a small amount of extra income by renting a room in their home through short-term rental platforms, which gave them flexibility and a sense of purpose. They also learned about the importance of having a specific retirement emergency fund to cover unexpected expenses, something they had previously neglected. The final and most valuable lesson David and Susan absorbed was that financial security in retirement is not a static destination, but a continuous process of planning, adaptation, and proactivity. Life is unpredictable, and being prepared for challenges, even those that seem unlikely, is just as important as building wealth. The concrete result of their new approach was the restoration of their peace of mind and the ability to enjoy retirement with more security and less anxiety. They learned to be proactive, to seek expert help when needed, and to adapt their financial plan to the changing realities of life and the economy, ensuring that the future, though always uncertain, could be faced with more confidence and resilience.